how have you been, man? What's new?
Oh, been good.
Yeah.
Definitely staying busy. It's a good time of year. People are looking at IT, so planning budgets for next year. So we've been really busy the last couple months.
What is it about this time of year that people actually start thinking about IT?
It's just new budget year, so
Okay.
thinking about how they're going to spend their money for next year, thinking about what their plans are, maybe reevaluating where they're at. So it's just a good time to kind of think about that.
Yeah. Uh, October is Cybersecurity Month, right? So I'm
Right. Yeah.
curious. We're about halfway through now.
Yeah.
Do you feel an effect when there's a national cybersecurity month? Do you actually feel more people coming in because they're actually talking about it and thinking about it?
I get a lot of questions from my clients. How does this impact me? And so we try to stay proactive about that as much as we can. So
Hmm.
if there are things that impact the clients I work with, then we're definitely going to send out an alert. And that's year round because it happens all the time. It seems like every week there's a new incident that happens somewhere.
Yeah. What's been going on here recently?
Um, well, you've seen things like, that they had the big hospital hack here in Louisville a few months ago, which,
So I didn't know about that. That was over at Norton, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't
And,
know. I didn't hear about it when it happened.
yeah, I don't know the details, but I'm sure they've got a great security team there, and it just seems like if the bad guys want to get in, they will find a way in. So we try
Hmm.
to just help people not be an easy target and just make it difficult for them as much as we can.
Yeah. I mean, what do you suggest a person does? I mean, it sounds like the hackers and whatever other words we're calling hackers these days are
Hmm.
getting smarter, um, and more nimble in understanding how to get around a lot of the stuff that is putting up to try to be proactive against them. So,
Right.
it, is there ever a moment where you can actually feel secure, or should you always be a little bit on high alert that something might
Yeah.
be coming?
Yeah. Always be on high alert, and still, it's 9 times out of 10, it's somebody who clicks a link in a phishing email that they shouldn't.
Mm,
And what makes it even more scary these days is with all the AI tools that are out there, these phishing emails are getting a lot smarter. So
man, you're
it's not
telling,
the
and they
obvious
look great
Nigerian
too.
prince. They're
Yeah,
not
it's no
misspelled
longer
words.
right, like commas everywhere. Like it's hard to tell. It's funny.
Yeah.
Before we started, Jen Mueller from the Scout Guide Lexington sent me a screenshot of a message that she
Hmm.
got on Facebook, which was a phishing scam. But these
Hmm.
things are looking really native to the platforms. They don't
Right.
have the grammatical errors. They don't have the like photo problems. If there's a photo that's included, a lot of times in the past it was
Hmm.
distorted and whatnot. But things look great. It's hard to tell anymore. And I get
Hmm.
emails almost every day. Uh, I don't know where people get our business name from. I mean, it's all over the world, all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But you
Yep.
get things that are like, hey, a new line of credit, all sorts of stuff. And
Right.
the only thing that goes through my mind is I haven't looked for a line of credit, so it doesn't make sense. It's not from a name that I recognize.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes I'll open certain things because it looks like it could be legit,
Right.
uh, but it's hard. I mean, it's almost teaching me don't open emails, because that's the
Right.
safer way to do it, right? Like just don't open the email if you have a question about it. But I also don't want
Right.
to miss out on business, so um,
Right. Go live in a
yeah.
hut in the woods somewhere. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how do you have any tips on distinguishing legitimate emails versus non-legit, especially from the
Yeah.
beginning?
So
I mean, a lot of times
yeah.
the 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 name and who it's from
Hmm.
and the subject line looks like it could be legit.
Right. And so what happens is with these AI tools, and there's so much information about you online. They can see, say, on LinkedIn, you got a promotion recently, and they can look up to see who you're connected to on LinkedIn. And so now John sends an email, who's somebody sends an email to you and says, "Hey,
Mm,
congratulations on that promotion. Um, here's a gift card, or here's some sort of video or something just congratulating you."
Have you
And, you know,
actually seen that? I haven't. That's smart, but I haven't seen
yeah,
that.
yeah, I'm hearing
Wow.
reports. I've not personally seen one, but I'm hearing people talking about reports like that.
Wild.
Um, but yeah, there's just so much stuff out there. It just makes it so simple for these guys to do this kind of stuff.
Could you imagine if they
So
took that energy and they put it towards something positive, like like
right,
what we would have in the
exactly,
world?
exactly.
Who are the people that
Yeah.
are behind stuff like this? I mean, a lot of times, like you said, we hear Nigerian prince, which conjures up maybe a certain image for somebody.
Hmm.
We also think of like a tech nerd in their mom's basement. I mean, who are these
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, it's not as much those anymore. It's actual businesses that do this. They make a living doing this, and it's just a numbers game. So you send out millions of emails. You just need a few people to take you up on this offer or click a link, and they're in. So and they run it as a business. They pay commissions. They have people who specialize in certain aspects of it, like writing the ransomware, for example, and other people are really good at the social engineering aspect of it and getting you to click the link. They infect ad networks, so you get the pop up. It says your computer's infected,
Mm.
which it really isn't. It's just an ad. But as soon as you click that ad, then now you're really infected. So it's
Oh,
got something you just got to be really careful of. And we tell people, lots of layers of defense.
so do you know? Um, and I'm going to ask a very broad question, but uh, I mean, what you just said is it sounds like there's a lot of technical um, skill that's necessary,
Hmm.
but then there's also there's the technical actually coding and making this thing happen,
Hmm.
and then there's also being on top is like the business person thinking, you know,
Right.
can we go to LinkedIn and do this and that, and how do we deal with
Hmm.
money? And those are two different kinds of people, I would think, a lot of times.
Right.
Is everybody involved in the circle knowledgeable that they're doing something like this? Uh, is everybody nefarious, or the people that are in there coding and doing the technical stuff like oblivious and just don't know that they're actually part of this? I mean,
No,
just
I
kind of
don't think
curious the
they're
makeup of
oblivious.
those people.
They're not
Okay.
oblivious. So, and they do things, like the ransomware people the people who write the code expect some sort of fee. Whatever you get, if you get $1 million ransom from somebody, they want their cut. And if you don't pay their cut, then you're going to get blacklisted and you're not going to be able to use their software anymore, or you get put on the bad guys list. Don't do business with this particular company because they're terrible. They don't pay out what they're supposed to.
The bad guy list. That's a really interesting
Right.
layer.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my gosh. So what's evolved and what's changed since last time you and I have spoken here?
Yeah, I think it's been about a year, right?
Yeah,
Roughly.
something like over,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, and I think, like I said before, it's just the stuff like Chat GPT. I mean, it just kind of seemed like it came out of nowhere. Um,
Yeah,
and these sort of AI tools that people are using these days, and it's just kind of taken over, and you see it everywhere. It's some of the stuff is really terrible. Um, you've heard about lawyers getting in trouble because they didn't do the research and asked Chat GPT to do it for them.
yeah,
So it's definitely interesting. I actually did a
yeah.
presentation on Chat GPT, and I asked Chat GPT to write the presentation for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How'd it do? How'd it go?
It didn't do bad. And in the last slide, I kind of showed all the prompts I used to create the presentation and kind of
Hmm.
uncovered the curtain there that I didn't actually do this work. So just
Were
to show
people
like
surprised?
a little bit, yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Hmm.
So now they're all
How did
suspicious every time we do a presentation. Like, did you actually do this?
anymore? I guess you should be, right? I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
marketers are doing that all the time now, and using it for copywriting,
Hmm.
research.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I use it all the time as sort of a starting point for things, rather
right.
than
I
going to
think it's
Google and having to go down that rabbit hole. It's like it's nice to be able to
mhm,
get a response and then
yeah,
be able to take that response and go legitimize it or look into it.
right. It's really good on creating an outline. What you're
Yeah.
trying to come up with a topic. What do you want to talk about? what are the bullet points I need to cover? It's really good on doing those sorts of things. But as far as the actual content, it's scraping that stuff off the internet. You're not sure how much of it is plagiarized. You know,
Yeah.
so you see it happening in schools and colleges, especially. You know.
Yeah. I think it's funny. Kids have been doing this stuff for a while with things like ChatGPT, and adults
Hmm.
are just finding out. And you're like, oh no, we've been doing this for a while.
Right.
Like, just it's crazy.
Hmm.
Uh, do you, with cybersecurity, that conjures up the image to me of uh, Trojan horses and things of that nature and
Hmm.
malware. Has it expanded to mis and disinformation? Because at the same time as security seems like it's evolved. It's not just a technical threat of like taking over a computer, but now it's the information that lives on the computers as well, I would think.
Right, and you're seeing that things like where they take videos, and they can take an image of somebody, and they can, you've seen things like of politicians debating, but it's somebody
Oh,
who's
the
who's
deep
actually
fakes.
right, exactly, the deep fakes.
Yeah.
What does that mean for things like movies? The actors are striking over some of that AI technology. So um, even they can take voice samples and they can, call your grandma. Hey, this is little Billy, and I'm stuck. I need money, but they faked everything because they pulled the video or audio from things you posted on YouTube or Instagram, and they're able to fake all of that stuff now.
How in the world do we deal with this?
Yeah.
And it's happening so quickly as well. How does somebody that's really not understanding any of this, how do they even begin to arm themselves and protect themselves?
You broke up there for a second. Didn't hear the question.
Okay. And I should have said this too. With this particular kind of software that we're going through, it's actually
Hmm.
recording locally and then it goes to the cloud. So if
Okay.
it breaks up on your end, the audience will never know. So
Okay.
if it breaks up, just push through, pretend it's not even happening. If it happens for like 30 seconds, then we got a problem. But I don't
Okay.
anticipate that being a deal. But the question being, if you're somebody that is just now finding out that these things exist, deep fakes and whatnot, how do you arm yourself? How do you even start to put up a fortress around yourself?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Just be suspicious of everything, especially if you're a company, and let's say that one of your vendors calls and says, "Hey, we've got a new bank account. Can you make sure to send your payments to this new bank account instead of the old one?" You need to have processes in place to verify that information is correct. Calling back at the number you have to verify the information. Don't just take a random phone call to do those sorts of things. So it's making sure that as a business owner, you've got the right procedures in place to verify the information.
Mm. So, what can I do, for example, to protect my business and my vendors and my clients so nobody in my circle gets hurt? I mean,
Hmm.
is that it? Like figuring out. So let's use your
Hmm.
example. Uh, a client calls me and says, "Hey, we got a new um, credit card. Old one expired. We need you to start charging a different one every month."
Hmm.
Do
Yeah,
I
so it's
take that
one.
information first, or do I hang up and say, "Hey, I'm going to give you a call back at the number that I have, just verify that you know this
Yeah,
is you."
and you can take that information down, write it down, but then I would say, hey, as part of our verification process, we're going to call back the number just to verify we've got everything correct. And I think most people will appreciate that, that you're being diligent. You're not just changing things based on a phone call.
Yeah. How do you? I mean, I would assume that that's a pretty easy conversation with a client. Like, hey, in today's environment, with deep fakes and people being able to fake that it's you and whatnot, we've started this new process of being able to verify that it's you anytime that you call, especially when it's around sensitive information. I would imagine that's a decent way to start that conversation, and that most people would be pretty receptive to that, right? Do you have any recommendations on how to have that conversation?
I lost you again there.
Yeah, do you have any recommendations on how to have that
Freeze.
conversation of like, hey, we started these new processes because of what's been going on with deep fakes and people being able to fake that it's you. I want to trust that it's you, but in today's world, we don't really know. So we've started this new process of being able to call you back, or here's how the
Right.
process goes. Like, how do you start and have that conversation?
Yeah, I think you just tell them outright. Say this is what we're doing. So, like when you call our IT support desk, for example, we ask you to provide us a mobile phone number. So, just like you do when you log into your bank and you get a text message, we're going to send you a text with a verification code to the number that we have on file, and that code validates that it's really you. And I think, especially with IT, because the sensitive information we're touching, that
Mhm.
people will appreciate that you're being diligent about taking care of their information.
Can it be as simple as a client calls me and says they want to update this information, and I just say, "Hey, I'm going to text you a code, and then I want you to tell me that code back"? Like,
Yeah, you could do something like that just through your
okay,
mobile phone if you have it. It could be something like that. Um,
because I would imagine sometimes, and I was just thinking about this for myself. Like, oh man,
mhm,
is this like another thing I'm going to have to keep up with and constantly think about?
mhm,
Or is there a much simpler way to execute this and just say, "Hey, I'm going to send you a word or 6-digit code"?
mhm. Yeah, and it's definitely a good way to do it. Or just say, "Hey, I'm going to call you back at the number I have." And if they start, dancing around that, "Hey, we got a new number," or "I'm not working there, I'm working from home today. Can you call me at my home number?" Well, I need to verify it through your work number. Those sorts of
Yeah.
things.
You just reminded me. There's a whole side of TikTok. I don't know if you're on TikTok, but there's an entire side of TikTok of people that scam the scammers.
I've seen some of those videos. They're kind of fun.
Yeah. So how does that work? How do they end up scamming the scammers back?
Yeah, they're using a lot of the same tools the scammers are using against them. So they're tracing to see where they're coming from. They are just making them do silly things, like, "Hey, prove that you're really, this person. Hold up a sign." It might just be some silly English word that makes no sense to them, but they'll write it down and do it because um,
Yeah.
just to prove that they who they are. But yeah, they just have fun with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust seems to be the biggest word that's going on anymore. Privacy
Hmm.
seems like that's way out the window, and we seem to be okay with it.
Hmm.
We put our
Right.
credit cards on every website ever. Last four of your social. We put our birthdays
Hmm.
everywhere for the 20% off discount for a shirt. People
Right.
have this information. So the privacy part doesn't seem to matter to us, even though people claim it does. But
Hmm.
trust seems to be the biggest word that we have moving forward. I mean, how do we stay civil together
Right.
and still actually enjoy each other, whether it's a client business relationship or friends? How do we manage to still be human beings while having to execute these kind of processes to verify it's even you?
Right. So, like I said, everything you should assume all of your information, your credit card, your social security number, is all out somewhere on the interwebs. It's everybody knows it. So how do you verify it and how do you protect yourself? So doing things like freezing your credit report. Nobody can open a new account without having your credit report unlocked. That helps some. But then you know, especially if you get an email with an attachment on it or something asking you to do some action, or if it's something that requires urgency. Hey, I'm in a hurry. I'm in a meeting with a client and they want a gift card. I don't have time to do it. Can you get some gift cards for me and send me the numbers? Well, I'm in the meeting. I can't do it. Can you do it right away? Well, anytime you hear that right away or it's an urgency, that's a big red flag that you need to slow down. You know,
Hmm.
we say stop, think, connect. So stop and think about what they're asking. Think about what it means, and then connect some other way. Hey, you know the procedure. I'm sorry. Even though that you're the CEO, I can't do this based on a text message, something like that.
Should you even reply? Like, at what
I,
level of engagement can you engage with a phishing email and not get phished? you know,
yeah, I just delete them or not
I mean,
respond.
can you? Is there a problem opening the email? Like purely just
Well,
opening it to read it?
yeah. So if you open it, depending on how your email is set up, they might be able to tell that you opened it, but definitely don't respond to it. As soon as you respond to it, now they know they've got a good email because they're going to go through just lots of random names. Especially if you've got it, say, a Gmail address. They're going to keep
Mm-hmm.
going through lots and lots of different name combinations. They don't even know if they're a valid email. And if they get a hit and you open it and you reply to it, now you definitely are going to be targeted going forward because they know it's valid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, it's just all of this is teaching us not to do things. I mean, my business phone, it's 75% spam.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they look like they're down the street with the area code and
Right.
stuff. You get a text message that tries to get you to prompts you to try to open it. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know this is spam. And of course, sometimes it even pops up and says potential spam. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, man, it's almost like the world is going to start becoming this thing where like we're going to ignore any inbound stuff. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not in my direct proximity standing in front of me, I don't really engage. You know, it's like the world's
Right.
going to actually get smaller. I don't know. Probably
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. A lot of times, if I don't recognize the number, I don't answer the call. Right.
yeah.
So.
And I feel bad about that sometimes because it ends up being
Mm-hmm.
a prospective client or something. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, I'd rather miss somebody's prospective call than do something, that's going to get us in some trouble. you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Who was it said trust but verify, right? So
Yeah.
exactly
How do
what
you
you're
do that
doing.
on a phone besides hang up and that's it? I mean, you get
Yeah.
grandma on the other line. I mean, I guess we've said this already, but you could hang up and say I'm going to call you back. But if
Yeah.
the call came from that number, do we really need to verify? Does that make sense? Oh, that's grandma's
Uh,
number.
I
I'm not going to
lost.
hang up and call. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if it says like, "Oh, this is grandma's number," I should be able to
Hmm.
trust that. Can you actually trust that? Is there an actual benefit to hanging up and calling that same number that just called you?
If grandma's calling and asking for money and she needs it right away, I would say, hey, let me call you back. If it's just chatting, then
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, are people actually able to like um whatever the term is, like basically use your number to call somebody?
Yeah, spoof the numbers. Yeah, it's
Is
it's
that what
really
that's
simple
called?
to do. Right.
Spoof?
Spoofing. Yeah.
Ooh, new term for
Yeah.
me. Okay, cool. So that's
Yeah.
the thing, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you see that today. Like occasionally I get somebody who calls me and says, hey, you just called me from this number, and I missed your call. What did you want? Like, I didn't call you, but it
Mm,
shows this number to call. So, they're spoofing, like you said, they're spoofing a local phone number, even though they're calling from, India or Nigeria
yeah.
or wherever.
Where are the most common places that these people are?
Yeah, they're typically in these countries that we don't really have great relationships with. They're going to be in
Hmm.
some of the Middle Eastern countries, or maybe some of the countries like in Eastern Europe, possibly Russia, places that if something were to happen, there's not much you can do about it, and that's what makes it
Got it.
really difficult.
I mean, are the
Yeah.
telecom companies doing anything? I'm sure they're doing something on their end,
Hmm. Oh yeah,
but
they
I
definitely do.
do, I
It's
don't
just
really
one of those
hear
things
about
where
it.
it's
So I'm curious, what are they trying to do?
Yeah, so they're trying to do things like identifying these numbers where they're spoofed, but it's one of
Hmm.
those things where you make a change, and the hackers make a change to get around your change. So it's just an ongoing uh, battle, to figure out how
Yeah.
to stay ahead of them.
I mean, I guess people are super smart with this stuff, but on the surface, it seems like it should be easy to tell. Like that signal came all the way from Russia. Like,
Hmm.
how do we not know that? But I guess
Hmm.
there's sophisticated ways of blocking the fact that you're in Russia and trying to make it look like I'm in England or something else, right?
Right. So just like people do, let's say you have a VPN and you want to watch a football game. So you
Hmm.
might log into the VPN and say you're from Chicago, and now you're watching a local television station or a local game that maybe you won't be able to see in Louisville or Lexington. So
Mm.
that's what, and it's the same kind of technology with all these voice over IP phones. They're just making an internet phone call and they're spoofing through something like a VPN where it looks like it's coming from a US address.
Hmm. Is a VPN a proprietary thing, or can anybody with enough skill actually build one?
And there's a ton of them on the market. So
Yeah.
you can build one for sure, but they typically take, you stand up servers somewhere, but there's a lot of sort of sketchy ones that are on the market that,
Yeah.
especially ones that are free are the ones I would be leery of. But
I,
there's
I,
definitely some that the ones that are paid are good.
I mean, are hackers out there actually making free VPNs for the sole purpose of actually stealing stuff on your computer? It seems like that would be a
Potentially,
pretty good thing, is come up with the SaaS product
yeah,
that looks legit and then just totally, you know, do
right,
your bad
exactly.
stuff.
You could, yeah, they could get an
It's
app
wild.
approved. Put the app out there somewhere. Hey, it's a
Hmm.
free VPN, and people download it and don't really realize what's going on in the background. So nothing's really ever free. There's always some kind of catch to it,
Yeah.
whether it's
Would there ever
advertising.
is there any benefit to the idea of like just banning and getting rid of VPNs? The
I don't
only
think so.
reason I say that is because obviously people want the privacy and be able to not be found. But then obviously on the opposite side of that, that allows people to be able to have the air cover to go in and do this kind of stuff. Do you think there ever
Yeah,
becomes a moment where we make an extreme decision of like everybody's on one or nobody's on one?
uh, I don't think so. And there's definitely valid uses for it. Let's say you're
Mm-hmm.
connected to a work environment from home, or you're working in a coffee shop. You don't want your office email or any sort of information that could be confidential going over unencrypted over a public internet. So the VPN is going to give you a point-to-point encrypted connection back into your office where it's going to protect that data. So definitely good, valid uses for it. But there's a lot of fun uses for it too. Like I said, watching out of market TV or other kinds of things.
That's illegal. Uh,
Well, I know like people, let's say they're traveling and they're in Australia or they're in Europe and they want to watch a local
yeah.
a U.S. Netflix show, right? So
Yeah,
they
that's
might
how I
do
got on
something like that,
Facebook in China. The school
right?
VPN. That's funny.
Right.
Um, the process of using a VPN, which honestly I have not used in a number of years, so the
Hmm.
process is, you know, could be different, but uh, it seems like just another thing that you have to do before you can get to the activity that you were trying to do on your computer
Hmm.
or your phone or whatever.
Right.
Have they made like going into a VPN simpler and more one touch rather than multiple steps?
The ones that are on the market are pretty simple to use. So typically, like if you use, say, a Windows computer,
Hmm.
it's just an icon. You double click the icon, you start the VPN, and then you're in. And that's pretty much all you have to do. So
Okay.
there's not much to them.
All right. So yeah, I mean that friction, that was always one of the things that prevented me from wanting to engage it. And I'm sitting here fully knowing, the vulnerability of not.
Hmm.
But it's just one of those things you think of like you're running through the airport and you got to
Hmm.
text or send an email real quick, and speed is in time is of the essence. It's like just
Hmm.
another thing to have to do. So I guess the more that they can remove that friction, probably the better to actually protecting people and
Right.
increase engagement.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you're on a cellular network versus, let's say, you connect to the airport Wi-Fi.
Right.
You know, that's going
Free
to be a little more
Bluegrass Airport Wi-Fi. Yeah.
right. And anybody can stand up a sit in the airport with a laptop and stand up a Bluegrass Wi-Fi. And then you're
Yeah.
connecting to it. So I just even like if you're in the coffee shop, I just turn on the hotspot on my phone and use that for my Wi-Fi connection instead of using the one at the coffee shop.
Hmm. What are some of the things that are coming up that maybe aren't on most people's radars as far as being a cybersecurity problem?
Well, you have to look at things like it's about a year away, but like Windows 10, for example,
Hmm.
you Microsoft is going to stop offering updates for that. I think it's September, October 2025, something like that.
Okay.
So those kinds of things come up, and you have to watch these what they call end of life type events for your software. Um, Windows Server 2012, people are still running that. This month, they stopped offering security updates for that. So as a business owner, if you've got old servers running Windows Server 2012, just keep in mind there's no more security patches for that thing available. So it's something you need to plan for to get things updated. So, staying on top of all your software tools, if you're using stuff from 2003, um, probably not very secure. So just, keep your software up to date. Those are the kinds of things. Just stay on top of that stuff.
Do you have any sort of data on the frequency or the likelihood of a business actually having some sort of ransomware attack or something else?
Well, they say it's somewhere around 60% of small businesses or medium-sized businesses get
Wow.
some sort of cyber event, whether that's somebody's clicked an email, maybe it's just a small type thing, or it could be something bigger. The problem is once they get those events, and let's say it is a large ransomware event where it encrypts all their servers. Well, as a small business owner, it's really difficult to recover from those. And so, because it's very expensive, you don't only have the downtime because you can't access your systems, you can't sell things, you can't do work. You've been in the store where their cash registers are down and people don't know what to do, right? So
Yeah.
um, it's kind of amazing. So, how do you deal with those sorts of things? How do you recover from it? Now you've got to pay lawyers, you might have to pay fines, you have to pay the IT person to recover from it. And so a lot of small businesses that get hit with these big ransomware attacks never recover from them. So
Mm.
it's one of those things that's like another insurance policy, making sure
Right.
you've got the right tools in place to prevent it from happening in the first place. Because once it happens, it's really difficult to recover from.
Is there like an average amount of money that a small business gets impacted with a problem like that? Even
Yeah,
on like the small side, like the small ransomware attack.
yeah, I hear numbers all over the place. So we tell people, what can you afford to be? What does it cost you to be down? So um, if you don't recover from it, let's say that people ask for the key, and they might charge. And what's interesting is a lot of times they've already been in your systems for a while before they unload this ransomware attack, so they might know how much is in your bank account. They know about what your revenue is, so they might want to say ask for $57,000 because that's what you have in your bank account.
Hmm.
And they know that that's what you can afford to pay, and that's probably what they're going to get. So it's one of those things that it depends on what they're getting, the size of the business. Um, so it's interesting because a lot of times when these businesses don't pay, they've already exfiltrated all your data. They might even go to your clients and say, "Hey, I've got your confidential information. So and so business didn't protect themselves. I'm going to release your information unless you pay me."
Hmm.
So, so now
And now
they
we're all
have the
suing
information.
each other.
Right, exactly.
Oh, geez.
So it's one of those things you just don't want to be in that position in the first place. So making
Does
sure you've got
insurance
the
cover anything like that? That might be a
uh,
silly question, but I don't know.
They will, but you just need to look at your policies closely, because let's say that you bought a cyber insurance policy to protect you from that, and there's requirements in that policy that you're doing certain things, like you're doing training, you're doing backups. Read the fine print of those agreements, because if they come in and they find out you never did a backup, for example, or your backups weren't working because you never tested them, the insurance company may deny the claim, and then you're on
Mm.
your own. So, even with cyber insurance policies that protect you against that, you have to still make sure you're following the rules and doing best practices to protect your business.
That makes sense. Is there
Mhm.
anybody that uh, maybe shouldn't look into insurance like that, or should everybody have some sort of cyber security insurance?
I think any small business should have something like that for sure.
Hmm.
Just because you never know when it's going to happen, and if it does happen, you want to be able to recover from it quickly. What does it cost you if you were to lose your business, for example? What does
Yeah.
that cost you? So it's just another
Hmm.
um, way to protect your business, just like any other insurance policy.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's wild. Like you were talking about small business. I think it's some of these bigger companies. I mean, you were talking about Norton, all these people, all these companies that do lots of revenue, and they have a lot of customers, a lot of clients, um, and those lawsuits that end up coming at the end of that, uh, they never seem, at least the numbers that I've seen that are public out there in some of these, they never seem like the restitution is really like actually good for the individuals. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's always like, oh, well, you're part of a class action lawsuit. Here's $32.25 because that's what you get.
Yeah,
It's like, great.
and
Well, you stole all my information and my life, but cool, $32. Thanks.
yeah, and I've gotten some of those checks in the mail, which I think the postage was more than the check.
Right?
So,
So,
yeah.
how do you protect yourself when you're not just going to a mom and pop down the store, but you're going to Target, you're going to Walmart, you're going to
Mhm.
McDonald's, you're going online to some, ecom website of, wherever, Home Depot
Mhm.
or something. Like, how do you
Mhm.
protect yourself in those environments?
Yeah, it's always being careful with your credit card, number one. But if I go to an e-commerce store that's one I don't normally use, I might use another payment method like PayPal or something like that, where it's going to be more of a one-time transaction, and they don't actually get my credit card number. Just
Hmm.
makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I've seen people talk about never using a debit card ever and only
Hmm.
using credit cards for that particular reason.
Right.
Um, is that
Yeah,
something that
debit
you would
cards.
advocate?
I would. The problem with debit cards is you don't have as much protection as you do on a credit card. So if you've got invalid transactions, um, it's a lot more difficult to work with your bank to get that money back than it is on a fraudulent credit card transaction.
Hmm. Do you think like crypto and blockchain is something that can actually help down the road with issues like this? Is that going to be just a complete and utter nightmare? How do you see all of that
Uh,
kind of fitting in?
Potentially, but I don't know about that as a payment method quite yet.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point in the future, but I can't imagine having a credit card that pulls from my Bitcoin wallet right now.
Why is that?
It just the complications of working with that, and it
Mhm.
just to me still seems a little shady.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just
Magically, a year later or so, we look around and we're like, well, NFTs sure went away, didn't they? and,
Mhm.
and blockchain in general, the conversation seems like it's dissipated. Seems like all those early movers got their money and ran.
Yeah, right. The people who bought Bitcoin at $50 are doing really well,
Yeah.
but again, it's all those late movers now. It's just sort of like any other currency or stock
Yeah.
or whatever.
But you have people that talk about things like smart contracts and saying that, oh, well, these are more efficient. They
Hmm.
require less steps. There's a lot more. security behind it, but at the same time, you're kind of vulnerable because if you accidentally send the contract to the wrong number, there's no way to retrieve that, right? So,
Yeah,
I, I,
and the problem is there's things like if you do say a DocuSign,
mhm,
um, if you look at those, there's lots of information where it's being very similar to like what you would expect from something like blockchain, where they're putting a hash on that document so that if you add up all the digits on the document, it comes up with a number, and then that magic number is locked to the document. So if anybody changes it, uh, you're going to be able to tell that. It records your IP, where you signed it at, your name, all that sort of information. So blockchain does that as well, but I'm not sure that it's really, I don't think it's ready for those sorts of solutions quite yet.
yeah.
There's definitely things like supply chain sort of things that might be interesting,
Hmm.
but as far as like the things we do every single day, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, see, everything we're talking about sounds very technical. Um, and like there's a lot of skill, not necessarily in coding something, but in recognizing things. Um, and the average person probably doesn't, and myself included with that average person, I don't understand everything. I mean, as
Hmm.
much as I know that certain things exist that are problems that are out there, I try to be proactive. There's still probably things that are happening that I'm not recognizing that are around me. So I couldn't imagine being somebody that like doesn't even know this is a thing. They're just living life and kind of oblivious to all of it. So
Hmm.
is this going to be one of those things that it's going to take a generation or two for people to just like we have that worked into our society and just what we do in working with VPNs and verification processes and everything? Is there something that you think
Um,
is going to like somehow change people that don't do this and magically get them on board and protect them?
and, so I think there'll be some sort of what you might call like a killer app that'll come out for it, where this is really the only good solution for it. Kind of like when the first spreadsheet came out, in the 80s, whatever it was, Lotus 123, or I can't remember now. But those sorts of things, when that first kind of killer app comes out, I think when people come out with a really good use case for it, I think that
Uh,
it'll probably just explode.
hmm. Well, looking forward to something like that maybe so that we could
Hmm.
slow some of these issues. I mean, when it comes to like national security, we just talked small business, something that can happen to just one person. Um, but what does this mean on a grand scale as far as cybersecurity? What are some of the issues that could happen if you get enough of these to happen or to happen to the right computer systems? I mean, we've heard of the Pentagon getting hacked in certain situations.
Hmm.
Like, what are some of the big issues that could happen?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely, it's one of those things where some people feel kind of like, well, if the Pentagon gets hacked or the FBI can get hacked or NSA or CIA, what hope is there for me? And they don't do anything.
You're right.
So, um, but and they've got people who are targeting them. They've got people, spies on the inside who are clicking these links or loading things that they shouldn't. So, as a business owner, you still want to make sure you're not a sitting duck for these criminals, because if you're not doing just the basics, they're going to find you, because they're out there looking for businesses that aren't doing anything, and just making yourself an easy target for them. But you see, especially like things like in these wars that are going on, where cyber is a big part of that, and there's some concerns that you know they create these things for military use, and somehow they get out in the wild, and now
Things like
these,
what? What do you mean?
like a virus, for example.
Oh, okay.
So maybe a virus that was intended to target some defense system. Um, Somebody loads it on a regular computer, and all of a sudden they send an email, and now it's impacting everybody.
Hmm.
That happened a number of years ago with I think it was one of the viruses they intended for Iran, and somehow got loose. So those kinds
Loose.
of things happen.
I like that visual of just out there.
Yeah, right. Just like another
Hmm.
virus,
Yeah, world's getting kind of crazy.
and it's all
Really
interconnected,
fast. Yeah.
right?
Uh, Um, I mean, is there anything that we should be doing that we've kind of gotten complacent in doing in a digital sense that maybe we really should just take out of a digital format and actually do in a more analog way?
Um, I don't think so. I think when you start going backwards, it's hard to stay competitive as a business owner,
Yeah.
because there's so much stuff that's digital. But the things that I see a lot that are still going on is people using
Where did I
the
just go?
same passwords everywhere.
Hang on one second. Oh, okay. Sorry, Jeff. Give me a second.
Sure.
All right. Nothing like a good technical problem. The V mount battery died, which
Oh
was fully
no.
charged. I don't know why. Anyway,
Oh,
so we're back.
yeah.
What were we just talking about?
So you were talking about analog.
Oh, going back in time. Yeah. And you were saying like
Yeah,
it keeps you from being competitive.
right, exactly. Unfortunately, a lot of the same sorts of things people have been doing for years, they still do. Like they use the same password everywhere. The
Mm,
same password they log into their school account or their um, rewards account at the local store or whatever they're using for their bank, for their work. And so when these smaller targets or maybe easier targets get hit or they show up on a data breach, the first thing that the criminals are going to do is they're going to try that password everywhere.
mm,
Hey, let's try this at a Fifth Third or a Citibank or whatever,
yeah.
and they're going to try that same password just to see if it works. Um, and more than half of the data breaches are because of a shared password that got exposed somewhere. So, yeah, using different passwords
Yeah.
everywhere and turning on multi-factor authentication, do those two things, and you're going to be a long way towards protecting yourself.
Man, it's just so many passwords I have to remember.
That, that,
do you
that's
do
why
you
you use
trust
I use a password manager for that.
I was going to ask you, do you trust things like LastPass or even the onboard Chrome password manager?
No, the password storage that's in Chrome is very easy to hack,
Okay.
and we run a scan for people just to show them how easy it is when we bring them on as a client or a prospect. I've got a tool I can run that will extract all the passwords directly out of Chrome within seconds. So
I guess I know
just
what I'm
don't
doing
trust them.
whenever we get it off of here. Just going and finding a better system. So what's a better, more bulletproof kind of system?
So, like I said, use a password manager, and there's a bunch of them on the market. If you go to look for password manager reviews, you can find them on PC Magazine or Lifehacker or other types of sites. It'll give you a bunch of different ones that are
What do
that
you
are good.
trust?
So the ones I use are Keeper or Password Boss. Those two.
Okay. So how does that work? Is that an app on your phone that you end up putting
Yeah,
on?
it'll have a phone app as well, but it's typically an app that runs on your computer. And so what you
Okay.
do is you learn one really good long master password. Um, so mine is 20 something characters long that I've memorized over time. And
And
then
what
once
is
you
that
memorize that,
password?
what's that?
Said, what is that password? Just kidding.
Right.
Okay, so you get a really long master.
So what you can do is just take a long sentence, for example. It
Hmm.
could be a sentence about your favorite vacation, or which something fun you like to do, or a Bible verse, or whatever, and take, say, the first character from each of those words and make a really long password out of it. That's a really easy way to remember it. And then from there, once you create that master password, everything else is encrypted within that container, within that password container. So nobody has access to it except you with that one password. So if you lose that password, you're in trouble because there's nobody who can help you get it back.
Wow, that's great and
Yeah.
terrible at the same time.
So I take mine and put it in a vault. So
Yeah.
if something ever happens, I've got everything in there.
I mean, is there any way for somebody to take the master password? Is there any way to really hack that?
So the only way to get that is, if somebody uses a short one, ABC123 for their master password, then they've got a problem.
Right, right.
So it
Got
needs
it.
to be a good one.
Hmm. But I mean, with supercomputers that are able to run algorithms and like run random things very quickly, um, I mean, theoretically, could there be a software out there that a hacker can run that could just test, you know, thousands, millions of varieties of things and actually get to you? Is that just like sci-fi and don't you shouldn't worry about that kind of thing?
Well, if you're using something like an 8 character password, it's going to crack it pretty quickly. So the more complicated and the longer you make it, and if it's not a word,
Hmm.
it's going to be a lot more difficult to hack because they're going to use things like dictionary attack, uh, for example, where they're going to start running words of the dictionary through it
Okay,
and see if they get a match. You know,
got it.
those are fairly
Okay.
easy, but if it's really long, then it's just going to take longer, and it could take, not to say it's not going to be sped up in a few years with everything the way it's going, but
Yeah,
right now, if you have 12 to 15 characters at least, it's going
yeah.
to be more than a lifetime for them to figure it out through a computer.
Cool. Well, good to know. So 20, like you, and we should be pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Got it. So what else is new with you though? You know, business wise and everything. Like you
Say
said
that
things are
again.
going I was saying what else is new business wise with you?
You keep breaking up on me.
How about now? Now I was saying what else is new business wise with you?
Yeah. So we've added some new partners. So I'm partnered with a bunch of different companies, IT companies around the United States now. So we're able to help companies that have branch offices all over the place. So if I've got a client who's got an office in, say, Chicago and St.
Hmm.
Louis and Cincinnati, I've got local partners in all those markets that I can work with to go out on site if I need to take care of an issue. So that's been a really great experience.
Yeah, that's great. And how big is your team locally?
Here locally,
Hmm.
yeah, we're just continuing to grow, so we're doing well, and um, yeah, continuing to bring on new clients and
Yeah.
doing well.
Who's an ideal client for somebody like you?
Ideal client
Yeah.
um, is typically somebody who's under around 50 employees,
Hmm.
somebody who they might have an IT person, but maybe it's not their first job. So it
Hmm.
might be somebody who's a COO who's doing IT, or it could be the college student who knows more about IT than anybody, and he gets assigned that job. Uh, it could be anybody, but we come in and help just professionalize it, make sure
Yeah.
they're following the procedures properly, and then just take over the IT for them so they don't have to worry about it.
And when you say IT, what does information technology look like today?
Yeah, so we start with cybersecurity first. So we're going to do multiple layers of defense because we don't want them to get hacked. So that's the primary thing we do to start with. and then we load our tools on the system. So we're doing proactive maintenance on their computers. Um, if they call and they need help, because we've got those tools loaded, we can jump on and we can screen share with them, take care of an issue. We like to tell people that we prefer to do it on a retainer sort of basis.
Mm-hmm.
So people get afraid to call because they're thinking if I call, it's going to cost me 150, $200 to take care of this issue. Well, just by doing it as a flat rate every month, they can call. They don't have to worry about that extra charge every time they call. And then we're going to take care of those issues and head them off before they become big issues at the client.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you're basically an insurance policy at this point for who knows what problems could arise, right? So it totally makes
Right.
sense to use somebody like you.
Mm-hmm.
What does an average kind of retainer look like?
I didn't hear your question.
What's an average retainer look like as far as cost
So
and
we
like what
charge
that gets you?
per. Yeah, it really depends. It depends on the size of the computer or the client. So we charge per person and per computer. So if you've got, say, 20 computers, but maybe you've got shift workers, you're going to pay for the 20 computers, but then you're going to pay a support fee for every person who might need help. So, so it ranges. It also ranges depending on the level of security. So if you've got, say, a medical practice that's going to need HIPAA compliance, for example, they're going to need more security requirements than, a roofer who doesn't have a lot of stuff internal. Maybe just they're running QuickBooks or something. So it
That
just
makes
depends.
sense. And what kind of somebody in your position, are there certain, like you were just talking about HIPAA compliance, are there certain certifications to look out for trying to find somebody to help with IT that would make them HIPAA compliant and have these other sort of skill sets and being able to protect these specialty companies?
Yes. So if your business, even if you take credit cards, for example, if you touch a credit card, there's some IT PCI requirements that you have to make sure you follow. So we work with the businesses to make sure they understand the IT components of all those requirements. Um, HIPAA has a lot of requirements to it, and there's a portion of them that correspond to IT. Making sure you've got a good firewall in place, that you're encrypting the data that you're storing, that you're taking care of those medical records, so that if your physician's practice gets hacked, you're following best practices to make sure your data doesn't end up somewhere else.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I'm about to go find Keeper and look into that because I don't need any issues on my side of things. But yeah, I'm looking at our time here, and I think we got to wrap a little bit. But I appreciate you coming on doing another follow up. Is there anything else that you wanted to knock out before we run?
As far as closing out here,
Yeah. Is there
yeah,
anything else that
just
you wanted to cover?
no. We've got a lot of tools on our website, so if they visit zjack.net, then we can. We've got a lot of good blog posts where we keep people updated. Some different things they can download, some best practices. If they want to email me, if they want to get a risk analysis to see where they're at, we'll run a risk analysis for them and say these are potential issues that you have in your business,
I bet
and
those are
then
pretty
you can
enlightening.
take care of them or give them to your IT person.
Hmm. Cool. And so is it z-jack.com? J-A-K?
Z ZJAK.net.
Okay, .net. That's right. Cool. Well, I really appreciate your time and coming on here again and chatting, doing a
Yeah, thank
follow-up.
you.
We should do it again in like another year because I'm sure things are going to be, changing rapidly. Whether it's these global issues that are going on or things happening here at home or in our
Hmm.
backyard. So
Right.
I think it would be cool to do this on a regular basis, and just kind of
Hmm.
see how things are changing.
Absolutely. Yeah, love to.
Cool. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, and it's great to see you again. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Lexington Business Show. Go right now, rate and review the podcast. It's how we grow and thrive and how we get more listeners and get to do a lot more cool stuff here on the show. Thank you.